Sony Animated Pictures really does seem to be on a bit of a come-up in the last couple of years, aren't they? Historically, I think they were well and truly one of the most forgettable studios out there. Yeah, they had some hits and prominent films and franchises like Surf's Up, Hotel Transylvania, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, and then The Smurfs as well, but I think for the most part these films are known for the film themselves. Nobody was thinking about the studio in the same way as thinking, oh, I love to see Disney films or Pixar films or now Illumination films, where you've got people who simply follow the studio and will watch whatever they put out. That wasn't really as much of a thing for Sony, at least until they started changing things up and blazing a new trail with the new types of films they're putting out. I think it all started back when they released Into the Spider-Verse. Everybody knew that Sony still had the film rights to the Spider-Man world and all the extended cast, and so I think this film's name power, as well as the extremely high quality, which led to an Oscar win, contributed to the rise of the studio and really did change the face of animation afterwards. So many subsequent films, particularly from DreamWorks, feel like they hone in on that new dynamic style, especially in regards to action sequences. Then they had The Mitchells vs. the Machines, which also did well in terms of its reception and once again got an Oscar nomination. 2023 saw the release of Across the Spider-Verse, which was yet another triumph for the studio, both critically and commercially, and then in 2025, Sony, in conjunction with Netflix, released yet another smash hit in the form of K-Pop Demon Hunters, which has honestly been a huge revelation, blasting into the Netflix top 10 in its first week of release despite only having 2 days worth of data left to be collected for that week, and having stayed in that top 10, and more specifically, stayed in the top 2 for that entire time. It cannot be overstated just how popular that movie's become in the short span of time since its release. You just know that part of them's going to be wondering how much money it might have made in the cinemas. Either way, it's become a titanic success, and I think it's Netflix's most viewed animated film ever, or something along those lines. I suppose what I'm trying to get across here is that there's been this big shift in the way that Sony's perceived as an animated studio in the last couple of years. And I think we're coming close to the point that it really edges out DreamWorks for its spot in the Big Four. The only thing that DreamWorks has over it is iconic nostalgic franchises, but now it seems that Sony's going to be able to make their own. This in turn brings us to GOAT, which feels like it's going to be Sony's next big film. I think whoever's in charge of deciding what creative direction Sony's going to take with their animated content deserves some extreme credit. They hit the big franchise with the Spider-Verse, which has gotten really popular and drew in a pretty wide demographic, and since then they've just lined up hits. K-Pop Demon Hunters serves a demographic that I don't think many studios have really ever tried to reach before, and what do you know? It's been an overwhelming success. It's the same thing with GOAT in my opinion. It's a very cleverly chosen film. It combines a wide range of demographics to draw their interest. It's a film with anthropomorphic animals, which pretty much always do well with the kids, but then it's about basketball and uses one of the biggest names in the sport to try to draw a different demographic to see it too. It's rather clever all things considered, and I think it has a really good chance of doing well for itself at the box office when it does come out. It has a good release window too. It comes out on the 13th of February 2026 without competition in its genre, and then it has 2 good weeks before the release of Cat in the Hat on the 27th, which also had massive interest on social media. Because of this, I think there's a very good chance that the film is going to be very successful. I don't think it's going to be a billion-dollar bonanza or anything like that, but I do think it could potentially get across the Spider-Verse numbers. I mean, hell, just take a look at the numbers on this trailer. It's doing amazing right now. It's been out for 2 days, and the trailer on YouTube already has about 14 million views. For reference, the Zootopia trailer dropped around the same time, and currently has just under 10 million views. I think that in the end, Zootopia is going to still be explosive at the box office and do massive numbers from all the kids that are going to want to go and see it, but it's a good sign for GOAT that it's pulling this much attention. Before we jump into the trailer though, there's of course a little preamble that comes with the trailers that gives you a taste of what the narrative of the film's going to entail. Here it is. From Sony Pictures Animation, the studio behind Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, comes GOAT, an original action comedy set in an all-animal world. The story follows Will, a small goat with big dreams, who gets a once-in-a-lifetime shot to join the pros and play Rawball, a high-intensity, co-ed, full-contact sport dominated by the fastest, fiercest animals in the world. Will's new teammates aren't thrilled about having a little goat on their roster, but Will is determined to revolutionize the sport and prove once and for all that smalls can ball. Seems like a pretty tried and tested type of storyline that we've got going on here. All of that preamble out of the way, and now we can dive into the trailer. Well, the teaser trailer. Let's go. We start off with a little message from Stephen Curry announcing that the trailer has arrived, which, well yeah, that's why I clicked the video. I guess this part would work a lot better on TV, and they did probably pay him a lot to make the clip, so they gotta make their money's worth and tack it on the front of it. Honestly though, now that I think about it, it is rather clever. I know I made fun of it, but if you're trying to attract a new audience to see your movie, making sure that people know that he's in the movie is the right call. After all, I don't think you can actually hear him in the teaser, do you? When we watch through it properly, I guess we'll find out, but you gotta make sure that people know that he's there and can build up the hype a bit more. I do wonder what his voice acting is going to be like. Is he going to be decently talented, or are we going to be dealing with some NBA 2K15 style voice acting? Man, on the one hand, I really wouldn't want that to be the case, seeing as I want this movie to be really good, but on the other hand, it would be so ridiculously funny at the same time.
Who have thought
About what?
that a young buck like you could actually do the right thing and avoid getting his sorry
I had a
butt kicked
teammate
out the
hold me
game?
back.
Immediately after that intro, we get a tiny introductory action shot of Will Harris, the lead character of the film, jumping off the back of a competitor and dunking the ball. From here you can see that once again they're really choosing films that showcase that dynamic and fluid style of animation. I'll just reiterate that them choosing to make Into the Spider-Verse and the creative choices that led to the development of that style, they're paying dividends right now. It makes for such a gripping and visually interesting film every single time. Then we get into the proper trailer with a look at Will arriving in a place where he lives, where he's confronted by his landlord. Right from the very beginning, I'm loving the stylistic choices here for both the animals and the world in general. It sort of has this grimy, grungy sort of feeling that sets it apart from the cleaner, more vibrant Disney style that you might see in the likes of Zootopia. I'm not trying to take a crack at Disney or Zootopia here, but I think that Sony is once again making the right choice and experimenting with something a bit different. Disney is the OG animated anthropomorphic animal film creator. Trying to go in and work with their toolkit is just going to lead to comparisons to Disney, and whether the film's good or bad, this is always going to lead to one of two things. Either it'll be labelled as a Disney ripoff or as a budget Disney, or even worse, I think, people are going to watch the movie and there'll be this immediate association with Disney instead of the actual studio that made the movie. This would be even worse if the film was a genuine masterpiece. However, if you go in your own visual direction, I think it becomes a lot harder to draw these sorts of comparisons. And so in the end, the film and the studio will benefit greatly from it. Beyond that though, just as a huge animation fan, it's great to see something different. It's like food. Animation's like a cuisine. Pretty much every cuisine on Earth is going to have a lot of extreme variety in the foods you're going to get served up at any one time. It's the same with animation. You want that variety. You don't want everything to have the same flavor or feel. One of the best things that's happened to animation in the last decade is Sony starting to push outside the box, which I think has inspired a lot of other animated studios to do the same. Back to the scene, it feels very Spider-Man coded at the start, with Will trying to get into his house, I guess, or his mail or something, only to be confronted by his landlord asking for the rent. Will, of course, seems to be low on money and he needs more time to make the payment, whilst the landlord needs that money now because he has mouths to feed. Here we get our first animal-based gag where it's revealed that he has hundreds and hundreds of kids. That's always something that makes me laugh in these sorts of films. They usually have animals grow at the rate of humans whilst retaining their original gestation rate. So that means they give birth like crazy and yet they age much more slowly, so the parents have a whole horde of kids at home. It's a classic gag, but it also begs the question, why are these people not wrapping it up at some point in their lives? I get not being the best family planner, but when your kids are getting into the triple digits, it feels less like an accident and more like absolute stupidity. Dude's crying about this guy paying his rent late as if that's going to be able to drag him out of the hole somehow. Nah, you're bankrupt. We then get a proper introduction to our hero. He narrates that his whole life, his only dream is to become a professional rawball player. Now, rawball is obviously basketball with some extra zest to it. A bit more violence, a bit more insanity, and it's going to become a great way to showcase that animation. Already this trailer has so much promise. This segment where he's bouncing the ball and then it transitions to his hero, it's just awesome. So anyway, we learn that this hero is Jet Fillmore, a Black Panther who's the best in the game. Already this character strikes me as a future villain. I don't think there'll be an overt villain, as ultimately I don't think that kind of hard hero-villain situation is going to work within a sports film, but I do think there's a good chance that this character is going to be a thorn in his side. She's going to underestimate him because of his size, but over the course of the movie, he'll continue to prove himself and overcome the challenges his size will pose, leading to her maybe sabotaging or something out of jealousy, trying to get him kicked off the team perhaps. Something like that, and then she either gets the boot, or he proves himself to her and it's all good and she apologizes, yada yada yada. The design for these characters as well is off the charts, my god, the Panther's great, and then the Warthog as the owner of the team is a great choice too, she looks so sleazy here. Then you get a look at this Komodo dragon character and it's top tier character design. All the characters are so memorable and detailed, it's perfect. We also seem to have quite a fun side cast for the team. But of course, the major drama of the film is going to revolve around the idea that Smalls can't ball. That in the end, because there are animals that are so much bigger and stronger than a goat such as Will, he has no chance of even being successful amongst amateurs, let alone going pro. Based on how this trailer's playing out, it seems the flow of the story is going to be something like this. We have the intro of meeting Will and hearing about his dream of becoming a big-time raw ball player. However, we see that his life is getting in the way for him a little bit. he's struggling for rent, and it doesn't seem like he's the right type of player that any team's going to be looking for. This is where the scenes from the teaser, like him meeting his landlord and practicing on his own, as well as the bar scene where he's FaceTiming his friends, and then also the scene where he sells his sneakers come from. I gotta say also, this film is looking really funny. They don't seem to be afraid with going with a really goofy humour that's quite out there and absurd, like the horde of endless children, or the guy that's going insane, sniffing and tasting the sneakers, commenting on their nutty flavour. I really like when a film's not afraid to seem silly and childish in that way. It's especially good when you have a character like Will who's presented as a bit of a straight man to the comedy. That way he can continue to personify the audience reaction, and thus it ups the comedy even more. From here the story's going to lead into Will trying to break into the league and sign with a team, which is where we get that local competition where he's with all these giant animals who mock him and say that smalls can't ball, whilst the huge crowd that it's gathered laughs at him. I'm thinking that this is some sort of tryout, as when he volunteers to go in next, we get the little compilation of various different characters incredulously asking, a goat? Although some of these are going to be spliced in from different scenes, I reckon, as it's probably going to be a running joke that they all hear about this star rookie, only to see that he's a goat. This little segment also cemented to me the Panther is going to be a villain. When it hones in on her a goat moment, she's dressed up in fancy pajamas with sunglasses on a throne with a big red carpet. That's classic villainous homeware in my opinion. I actually think it's going to be the owner that sees something in him and signs him to the Thorns, and then he's going to prove himself to the rest of the team. Also, these snippets really showcase the action very well, but I'm curious as to the rules of the sport. They also reference how the arenas are dangerous in and of themselves, so are there going to be environmental hazards? One of the shots after he seems to have made the team looks like rocks are falling from the ceiling and he's had to dodge them. Seems like a pretty brutal game, hey? All in all, it's a great teaser to tell you the truth. A lot of disconnected content, but that's pretty much par for the course when it's just a teaser. The proper trailer in a couple of months is going to show us a lot more. Here we just got a chance to see the style, the action, some jokes, and it's all hits. I'm really keen for this, and with a strong cast behind it too, I think it could be one of the best animated films of 2026. That's my very, very early call. However, in the end, these have all just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the teaser trailer for GOAT? Did you like it? Hate it? Are you excited for the film? Maybe not. I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.